Welcome all to the New Dream Podcast. I'm Sarah Grady, and as Bryce Savage's song states, I'm a Pisces with no fake love here. My soul felt deeply called to create the New Dream movement of unconditional love and support for all, so here we are. Whether you're here for the stories, engaging authentic conversations, to discover new tools to create change in your life, or just the unconditional love and support that's felt, know that you are beyond welcomed. Take what fits for you, leave the rest, because life is yours to live and your heart will know the way. Let's get started creating our new dreams. Hello and welcome. Today we have Tristin Storme with us. I'm so excited to hear about the beauty that is Tristin. Could you explain to our viewers a little bit about who you are in this present moment? What do you do in the world?
I love that question. Hello, everybody. It's so wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for having me on. And I've been excited for the last week about our conversation today. So that's such an interesting question. Who are you? Who am I? It's been quite an interesting journey in looking at how we create and frame identity. So like when you ask that question, who am I feel like the two most powerful words that we have in the English language is I am, and then whatever comes after it. So yeah, I think to be quite mindful in how I answer this question, and perhaps anyone watching this as well to start to get really curious about how they answer that question themselves. So for me, I am a life aligned coach and I help assist people to move from their default, what our subconscious program, everything that we've been taught to be in the world, who we've been told who we are by society, by our families, by our work titles. And I think to sort of liberate ourselves from those defaults, to start to design a life that we absolutely love, like that we don't really need a holiday from, and being able to move out of those survival mode constructs that we find ourselves in, that urgency, the scarcity, the lack, the fear, competitiveness, all of these things that I feel really kind of limit our human experience. And yeah, for me right now, I am really connecting with that highest timeline of my most thriving self. So I am a mom of two beautiful, magical little beings, and we live in South Africa, KZN Midlands, which is kind of like, I like to call it the Shire. It looks like it's got rolling green hills, kind of looks like, the Shire. And we're doing a bit of off-grid homesteading. So we've got spring water and growing our veggies. And yeah, that's really been such a strong visualization for me. Every vision board, every wish list that I've ever had. And it's quite interesting to find yourself living inside what once was a dream. And we all go through those seasons, as we're growing, as we're evolving, our dreams change and our desires change. And so yeah, where I currently find myself right now is living inside a dream that I once had. And yeah, really supporting people all around the world, all different ages, all different walks of life, to move, like I said, out of that survival blueprint and starting to explore, like, who am I in the most thriving, delicious, delectable version of myself? Like, how does she move? How does she speak? How does she operate in the world? And that's a practice. We have to wake up every day as the person we want to be. Otherwise, we keep repeating, we let history repeat itself, or history repeat itself, right? So I think that's a continuous thing to kind of gauge and answer that question. Who am I today? So this morning, the word was, today I am calm, self-regulated, and joyful. So I do this little practice every morning when I wake up, and I ask myself that exact question that you asked, like, who do I want to be today? And what are the qualities of that version? I hope that answers your question.
It does. And it's so powerful. Like, I got chills through the body. Like, that's my sign that spirit knowledge is just being thrown at me. And it's so beautiful to just see how you wake up in the morning. And that could be a really, I don't know, I might implement that myself. I don't
It's
know.
yours, girl. Take it, take it, take it.
Like
Yes.
I do meditation occasionally, but like that just seems really powerful. Reminding yourself every day, who
Yeah.
am I?
I mean, think of it like our stream of consciousness is like a river. You know, a river
Yeah.
is never the same river twice. You know, it's always moving, it's always in flux and flow. And we create continuity by that question, right? Who am
Right.
I? So, oh well, you know, I'm anxious, I'm worried, I'm all these things. And
Yeah.
as opposed to seeing that every day when the sun rises, we have that opportunity to be like the phoenix, you know, that we're getting to reinvent ourselves. And I feel for me, one of my missions has been learning to be super flexible with that state of being, you know, to start to get really conscious about, yeah, what state we're showing up in and being flexible enough, you know, life's chaos, life's freaking hard and painful and all of these things. Like that's what we signed up for here in this crazy ass human experience.
Yes.
And to recognize that we can be flexible in that, you know, we have this impact that's happened, you know, like so and so cut me off in traffic or this bill came in, and how can we be flexible enough to adjust to come back to a state of resourcefulness, a state of gratitude, a state of bliss. And I think most of us have disconnected from, we feel like our states of being are happening dictated to us by our external circumstances. And yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm here to blow that out the water.
I absolutely agree. I feel like that's what's around me all the time. Like, and I say the statement a lot. It's happening for me, not to me,
Yeah.
just to remind me, like, this is for me to grow. What can I do? What can I take from this to grow forward? So I love that that's what you are like helping others in the world kind of root into their bodies to try to give a happier way of being.
I love
So
it.
I love this version of you right now. And I know from personal experience, like the growth journey is crazy and it can be long and hard and all the things in between, but joyous, of course, too. But I'm curious, like, have you been on like a growth journey for quite some time? Like, where did you come from?
Okay, so now that's a whole other question. Yeah, it's been a tumultuous journey, and I think that for a lot of people, definitely people that I really admire and look up to, the journey is rocky and
Yeah.
arduous sometimes. And yeah, so for me, I had, my mom was very young when she had me. She was only 19. So really not prepared or equipped to have a child. Obviously, she's done the very best that she can, and I turned out okay. So kudos to mom. But yeah, it was pretty hard. We moved around a lot. There was, you know, she was a single mom, so a lot of string of kind of unsavory men in the situation. And yeah, I had to face some pretty gnarly things growing up. I developed around age 5, I developed chronic asthma
Ooh.
and had that up until about 14. So in and out of hospital, I was kind of like that nerdy, sick kid with my asthma pump around my neck. So I couldn't really play sports. Never really felt embodied. And I think one of the biggest things that I took from that experience was that feeling of like powerlessness, you know, is here's this doctor telling me what's wrong with me and what medication I need to have. And yeah, really feeling dictated to. And I
Right.
think I developed a pretty severe anti-authority complex because of that. And, you know, later, like obviously I had to go through the rebellious phase, you know, teen rebellious phase of that. But I really feel like it's all been such fantastic compost for everything that I now am, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
so with the asthma and moving through that, I realized that the emotional things that I've been going through, so quite a lot of traumas in the household. My mom had substance abuse, and like I said, not great male role models. My dad left when I was 2,
Mm-hmm.
and so not really feeling that like safe masculine. And then looking at my mom not really being very aligned. I started
Right.
to realize that there was mental and emotional components to this physical illness, that the more I was honest and started to express some of the experience that I'd had that literally was suffocating me. I just held that all inside on my chest. Of course, the asthma was my body's way of kind of protecting me in a way. And it
Right.
was also the only time that I felt real love and care for my mother was when I had just had an asthma attack. So I started to notice this around about 14, 15, that I was like, oh, okay. Like, obviously, the asthma is very real, very biological. My lungs are literally closing. I'm not faking this, but there's definitely some underlying reasons behind what's going on here. So I started to explore that. Around 16, I started weaning myself. I was like, no more cortisone. My kidneys were pretty taxed out.
Right.
Um, and yeah, I just started looking at alternative therapies, different ways of being able to manage the asthma through herbs, going, starting therapy, starting my self-development journey around that age. And that has kind of been a lot, yeah, from then, from around about 16, a quest, almost like a, I want to find the most potent, powerful tools to really understand that mind body connection, mind body spirit connection. I feel like everything's so compartmentalized. You go to this specialist to look at your like toes, and then you go to this specialist to, and everything just feels so separate. And for me, I was like, no, but like, where's the alignment point? Like, where's the intersection? Like, that's where the information is. It's like where these things overlap, you know?
Right.
Um, yeah, so I left school and started finding some tools, 10 years of tool finding. And like at every time I kind of hit a bit of a wall and was like, okay, but this is maybe a little bit too esoteric. I want like more science. Then I'd kind of go in there and I'd be like, okay, no, this is a bit too like logical. Like, let's go back to spirit. And I feel like it's been quite a beautiful unfolding of just every time like the tools were revealed, and I think they'll continue to, because I love
Yes.
learning and I just have such a love of learning. But yeah, that's kind of been the process. And one of my great biggest dreams was to travel the world. I'd grown up in the same sort of little town. We move around a lot when I was super young, but then lived in the same house. And I was like, I just want to see the world. I want to like expand my horizons. I want to have a lot of influence, lots of different cultural influences. And so yeah, I've made this vision board, my first ever vision board of like all the places I wanted to travel. I had no money at the time. It
Right.
wasn't like a realistic like dream at all. But I was like, hey, these are all the things that I want to do. And yeah, over the course of that was probably 22, 23. Like I made it at about 22, 23, bought a one-way ticket to Greece and ended up traveling for 3 years, and that vision board was packed in a box, didn't see it. When I came back after 3 years, I didn't come home for 3 years. I'm South African, for anyone who's watching. Our passports are like pretty rubbish. So the fact that that was even possible to just not come home for 3 years was very magical and really showed me when you align yourself and sync with the flow, all the doors of opportunity, like miracles literally can happen, when you put yourself in that flow space. And it did. I came back and I remember looking at that vision board and being like, holy crap. I Machu Picchu was on there, and Jordan, being able to see Petra, and all these like real ancient sites that I had such a connection to, I'd seen with like very little money, as a traveler, and like just crazy. I still want to write a book about it because like a lot of it was very crazy and and quite unbelievable. But yeah, and then came back and was ready to ground, met my husband, and then started this new dream that I'm currently in. So yeah.
I love that. That is so inspiring. So were you always surrounded by like, I know that you grew up like with a single mom and all this stuff, but like, was there somebody that kind of threw in those little seeds, like there's always those seed planting that, you might hear it somewhere, or it might be on the TV, or you might have read a book, or someone said something. Like, was there any seeds that were being placed in your environment when you were around that young? Because it's so intriguing to me that you were so young when you were like, no, I want to take over my body here. Like, this is enough. I've had enough. And it's so beautiful that you got that message. And I'm just curious, like, what was it that?
So there's a few things that stand out. My granddad has always been a really inspiring person to me. He's led a life, of absolute faith. He's more religious, but it's spirit, it's that
Right.
connection to faith. So, take the labels away, and he's really just led such an integrous life and
Mhm.
built his empire from very little. He's now 88. He's born on the my daughter's born on the same day as him, which is
Oh.
so special. And yeah, he's just always been such an inspiring, even though he wasn't necessarily, I don't think, like, influencing per se, but
Hmm.
I think that kind of looking at him and just sort of noticing that, like, wow, he's so fit and healthy and strong and vibrant, and like really directs his own life. I
Right.
think that was very inspiring. My dad, funnily enough, he wasn't present very physically, but he's one of the most amazing human being, like crazy amazing human beings that I know. He's just a wealth of knowledge. He can play any instrument. He's very, and I kind of, growing up, I always saw that as like, him connecting to ego, like coming through ego, and kind of wanted to reject it. But I think it definitely had a huge impact in my quest for knowledge. I remember him always saying to me, knowledge is power, knowledge is power, knowledge is power. And I think I was probably like 20 or so, and I was like, but wisdom is truth, Dad. Like, knowledge is only one part. And like, now we can agree on that. But I think that seeker in me, that like desire for knowledge and to understand, and it definitely got those genes from him. And then yeah, I think, I mean, there's always like a teacher or a book that comes, there's, yeah, definitely a lot of those influences, but I think hard to pinpoint like an exact thing.
Right. But
Lots of
all of
little
those,
messages, yes.
yeah, all of those make the piece of the puzzle, though, because it just shines a light to, you can take a look around you and see messages in everything. And you don't have to necessarily do it like everybody else, but you can take what resonates and just create your reality. Excuse me. Create a reality that is so beautifully unique and yours, but also rooted in, these are my people and this is what they did. And then here's what I'm going to do.
I'm going to take that and do something completely different with it.
Exactly. It's such a beautiful message. And even with your dad not being very present, like, you still gained something
So much.
beautiful from him. And that's just beautiful too. I don't know. It's just, I can feel the love and I can feel the support, even if it wasn't what, either society or what we necessarily want and expect
Once.
out of our loved ones.
Mm.
But it's still support in the best way they knew how. And it's, I don't know. My favorite word is beautiful, because it's like the deepest meaning I have of, like, this is this life that we get to live. Yeah.
I love the word beautiful. Yeah. I think just to what you said there, sort of struck a chord. I think one of the most influential, just in terms of, I felt very unsafe in the environment growing, like in my body I didn't feel safe in the
Right.
environment, and my gran was definitely the most loving and present and support. I remember, like, going to sleep at night feeling so scared, and she would lie on the phone with me, and just like talk me to sleep. So that definitely has had a huge impact on me, in terms of knowing, like, when I think of safety, and this is something I do with my clients often, is because the opposite of survival mode is feeling truly safe.
Right.
To be able to thrive, we have to feel safe, and a lot of us have lost touch with what safe actually feels like. So we
Right.
keep defaulting to fear, because that's what's most known, most visceral to our nervous system, to our minds. And
Yes.
so, we kind of need to think about, like, what does safe feel like? And for me, safe is like curled up on, like, using granny's, she had these big boobies, like using them as pillows and kind of like snuggling in there and just feeling like just that complete, like, in this moment, nothing could touch me. What is that for you? Like, what is safe for you? Like, what is that feeling?
Safe for me, really, I think, is just feeling like I can share what's on my heart. Like I'm going to be able to say what I've got to say and not be attacked, because like that was my childhood. It wasn't intentional, but there was a lot of anger and like, I'm the parent, you're the kid, you don't have a voice or an opinion. So safety really is just, let's hold space and let's be here and present with one another, and just be able to, I don't know, navigate this beautiful life in whatever way that looks how. And if I make a mistake, I'm not going to get yelled at.
I love, and I mean, that makes total sense to me why authenticity is such a high value for you, because it is.
Absolutely.
It's just that, like, being able to be completely and utterly yourself without those ramifications that, we do. Our parents unintentionally condition us to believe that it's
Yep.
not safe to express ourselves for their own stuff. I think, like, as a parent now, I can reflect and be like, that was really hard. Like, I
Yeah.
can imagine, like, and I've got a loving, amazing, supportive, fantastic husband. So I can't even fathom how challenging that is, to just feel so inundated by stress and overwhelm. It doesn't, like, make it okay, or it doesn't invalidate what the experience is for you, but
Right.
I think having that compassion and understanding is part of the growth journey as well. Otherwise, we're just also locked in anger or resentment of, like, oh, you didn't let me be myself, as opposed to, okay, you being that way has led me to build a life around authenticity. Thanks,
Yes.
guys. You did okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And then being able to like honor the fact that my perspective and your perspective are both valid and beautiful, and we can hold space for both of that and then understand each other. And like, that's where the authenticity for me comes from, and like who I am as a parent and who I am in the world. And you can come to me and be like, what you said, hurt me.
Yeah.
And I can hold space for, oh, like that wasn't my intention. I'm so sorry. Like, how do we move through this?
Mm.
And what better way than to just continue to be that in the world for other people, to show them like this is possible.
Oh, you're doing
And
amazing work.
I do my best every day.
You're
It
doing good. You're doing
looks
great.
looks different every day.
Good. You're good. That's the point, right?
Right. I completely love your message. Like, you took a childhood that could have like broken so many, and it does, like, it will stay lost for so long, and you took such valuable messages and seeds and created this beautiful reality for yourself, and you really stepped into like, I get to change this. I don't have to be what everyone else is around me. I can be true to who I am and what I can share with the world. And you just have this beautiful light about you. And I feel so honored that I get to sit and like hold space and just have you in my environment for the short amount of time I have you.
Feeling is completely mutual. So thank you. Thank you
Thank
for that
you.
reflection.
So moving through all of that and like stepping into like your purpose and what you're sharing with the world, what have you created? Like, what has blossomed out of this beautiful being that is you?
Okay, so yeah, a few things. I mean, I've spent the last 6 years focusing mainly on one-on-one coaching. Like, you use the word space holder, and I feel like
Mhm.
a lot of healing really is just that. It's just being able to be witnessed,
Yes.
without judgment, and to just, and it's different, tried a lot of different types of therapy, and I think one of the big ones was that, like, there's a difference between sharing your story
Mhm.
and feeling trapped in that victimhood of, like, when you reiterate the same story, like we said earlier, you're creating that continuity. It's like I've almost created like an identity around being a victim, or the pain body, or this experience. And I feel like quite a lot of times that very traditional form of therapy is like we're continuing, you know, like I did like a good year of it, and I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I'm saying like the same thing again and again, and I didn't really
Yep.
I didn't feel like I was able to evolve yeah, I mean I did, but like in that setting, in that way.
Right.
And so a lot of my work has been around you know, holding that space and really honoring the truth of your experience and what you've gone through, but recognizing that you're authoring and that we are the meaning makers of life. So I can look at those traumas now, and feel like if I was to do life again, I would still choose exactly the same thing, because it really has molded and shaped every aspect of my being.
Yep.
And I now, moving forward, like I said, don't need to let that repeat, because this is what happens with those default, the subconscious defaults is when things have happened to us, we believe that that's normal, and we
Yep.
start to accept that. So, you know, I was in a lot of the abusive relationships and toxic, you know, dynamics, because that was what was familiar and normal to my nervous system. So a lot of the work that I do with clients is being able to hold that space, to honor and recognize, you know, to own where you are on this dot, on this beautiful map that is your life. You know, this is where you are. And the only way to truly move and transform, to transcend form, is to own fully. Okay,
Yep.
so yes, I'm here. All these decisions, all these experiences, every choice, whether it be conscious or a lot of times unconscious, this is how I kind of got here. So we do a blueprint mapping. We kind of map out the history. We look at, you know, hereditary things, because these are, again, we know now with epigenetics, we're not bound by our genes, but there is certain tendencies that if we're
Yep.
not consciously upgrading or updating, that those genes are there, and if we're just feeding that pattern, those genes are going to turn on. So we
Yep.
don't have to be afraid of our, you know, sort of genetic destiny. We can be in charge of that, but we have to
Yes.
kind of first see what we're working with, like what are all these data points. So yeah, the last 6 years I've been working very closely, very intimately, one-on-one predominantly, and we do those mappings, and then from that we move to, okay, so this is the default, this is what we're working with, what are we consciously wanting to design? And as we move through that process, so we're owning, we're looking at the design, we're looking at the blueprint, we're needing to clear a bunch of stuff, right? So I work closely with our emotions, because they're such amazing little messages of
Yep.
how we're interpreting the world. So we do a lot of clearing the negative charge that we've held on certain emotions. For example, you know, I'm not allowed to be angry because it makes mom uncomfortable. So I have to
Yep.
be a people pleaser. Okay, so we want to clear that charge and give you back. Anger is your freaking bodyguard. It's powerful. It's like, it's such a powerful emotion. Let's give it
Yes.
back to you without all that nonsense that we've built and those layers and the stories that we've told ourselves. So a lot of the work is that the unbecoming of
Yep.
what we've identified with, and then very much, and we do this in conjunction with okay, so if we're unbecoming this, then what are we actually wanting to feed? What is this
Yep.
version? You know, how does she walk, talk, move? What does she believe about the world? And starting to build these conscious states of being. So that's kind of been the work for the last 6 years, last over a decade, collecting tools. But I had a lot of imposter syndrome, a lot of fear around really stepping into my offering, because I feel like you know, in this work it's challenging to feel like, okay, but I really want to be humble and authentic and like, oh, like, but letting source move through you and sort of
Yes.
stepping out of your own way and allowing it to move through. So that was I think a big block for a lot of the time, was just that fear of letting it through.
Yep.
And yeah, recently in the last couple of years, I've moved also just wanting to have a greater impact and reach more people. I've started transitioning into more group work, and creating online, you know, self-study courses so people can really do it in their own time. And, you know, I feel like we become a little bit, I noticed with clients that there's like a bit of a dependency, because it's like you step into a session and you're like, oh, I walk out of it feeling amazing and empowered and strong. And then life happens and I move out of alignment and I
Yep.
forget.
Yep.
And then, you know, so I'd have these my amazing clients that always know that they can reach out and find alignment again there. But I wanted to start making things that were more accessible, that it was like, here's my toolbox. It is mine and I can reach for it whenever I need. I'm not so dependent on external things. And so I developed Wayfinder, which is exactly that. It's just an amazing toolbox of how to really go within and recognize that you have the answers. No one can tell you what's right or wrong for you. Like, you
Yeah.
know. And it's completely unique because our blueprints are completely unique. So yeah, that's kind of, so I still do the one-on-one. I also do some work for an amazing company that looks at cultural alignment for big corporations, moving them out of profit-driven capitalism to sort of being more people-centric and looking at impact. And so that's been really rewarding
Ooh,
work. Yeah,
yeah.
been really awesome because, I've always been like, so anti-capitalist, and
Same.
it's such a wonderful way to. So I do the behavioral coaching with them, where we're literally upgrading their consciousness as the individual, and as you change the individual, the culture starts to change, and creating
Right.
again that alignment in the organism. It's an ecosystem, but
Yeah.
every person, that especially leadership, needs to kind of plug into that. So I've got quite a few different components to the work that I do and the offerings that I have. So yeah, the corporate, the one-on-one, and then I've got a few courses, self-study, and then these group programs that I offer.
Oh,
Yeah.
you are just creating such beauty in the world. Hey, and it kind of like, I feel like source, almost like I have this inner knowing, and this thought popped up as you were talking, and it was just such a beautiful message, because earlier you were talking about how your safety is just remembering that you were being held by your grandma, and just being safe in her arms, which is really what we need and are looking for in childhood, is that safety. But then if you didn't get it, or you didn't experience as much as you needed, you move into this adult world, and you're still struggling to find that safety. And like, yes, deep down, like, we need to find it in ourselves, because we,
That's
as
all good in theory. It's
adults,
hard.
it's so hard. So like, you're offering that safe space of, I've got you until you can stand on your own 2 feet and have yourself. And it's just, oh, so
I got
good.
excited there as well. Hadn't seen it like that. Yeah, that's thank you for that reflection. That's
You're welcome.
Yeah, because I don't know. I think it is really just, especially with the world changing. We've just gone through COVID, and like the world is really AI. Everything's like so intense right now,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
we especially, I hear a lot in the self-development community. It's like, you gotta fulfill yourself and like find all things, and it is great in theory, and it is true. It is
Yes.
true.
Yeah.
But if we don't have those tools, and like I said, I think in our little pre-chat, we were having a little chat before, is we don't we haven't been given, we weren't taught this stuff. How are you supposed to
Yeah.
know something you weren't taught? It's like,
Absolutely.
if you weren't taught about like ancient Greece, and someone pop quizzes you, you're not going to know. So yes, we have this intrinsic knowing, but we can only tap into that from thrival mode, from our divine connection mode. We can't do that from survival mode. So
Yeah,
saying to
absolutely.
someone who's in survival mode, like, oh, you just have to like fill your own cup and like deal with, it's like, it's quite mean, right? Because the person just is left feeling so utterly inadequate and so incapable. And so, like, and that doesn't really help the self-esteem building at all, because they're
No.
like, okay, but what do I do? What does this even feel like? Where do I start? And, like we were talking about, it really starts with being able to bear witness to yourself in a
Yep.
non-judgmental, safe container, in a beautiful way, where you can see those really harsh truths about yourself. It's like, it's not
Mhm.
comfortable to be like, oh, like, I've been enabling narcissistic behavior my whole life, because I've been like, that's a hard thing to own and to look at, because from our victim state, it's the world happening to me. This thing happened
Yep.
to me. I have no control, I have no power.
Yep.
And it just is, this is life. And then that becomes a belief construct, and our behavior comes from those beliefs. And so we almost create a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy every time it happens, like, oh, but you see, this person was an asshole and no one can be trusted, and this is just life, as opposed
Yeah,
to really going, what are my filters? What lens am I looking at life through? What am I saying? How am I moving? How am I operating in this world? You know? And I think
absolutely.
it's quite empowering to recognize if it's me, I can change me. If it's the world, I can't do anything about that. You
Right.
know?
Absolutely. And it's just a powerful message of like starting small, like
With
just
baby
with the
steps.
mindset, those little baby steps of who am I? Who do I want to be? How can I make a tiny step towards that each and every day? And it takes that pressure off of like, I need to change all these things and then rubber band back to who I was in
What
survival mode.
the default. Yeah, well, that's the thing
Yep.
is like we will and we do, I kind of see self-development as like we're conscious, we're spiraling, we have
Mm-hmm.
this negative connotation to like, oh my God, I'm spiraling. We're always spiraling, we're evolving, we're moving upwards, but as we spiral up, we're about to expand to our next level, we hit the bottom of that rung.
Right.
And often it's in that moment that we're like, I'm exactly the same as, like no change. I've been doing all the work and like nothing's working. What's wrong with me? As opposed to recognizing, okay, so I'm here. I'm needing to look at some stuff. I'm having a little dark night of the soul. It
Yeah.
doesn't need to be so scary. Like, I love to look. One of my favorite things to do is reframing. I think
Mm-hmm.
I've become my clients call me the reframe queen because I'm very good at being able to take. And there's a difference between, and I want to highlight this because I feel like there's a lot of toxic positivity, especially
Yes.
in new age esoteric communities, is this kind of like just positive thinking, and we just gotta like focus on what's positive, as opposed to like that invalidates the pain. If you're
Yes.
feeling sad and you're saying like trying to say your affirmations and like get out of sad, because there's a judgment, there's an invalidation of that emotion, and
Yes.
whatever we're resisting is going to persist. It's going to keep showing up, and it's going to keep the message, the alarm is going to keep getting louder and a bit more intense if we ignoring it in that way. And so a lot of this work is about recognizing when I have that dark night of the soul. I love the metaphor of the chrysalis, like a butterfly, in order to become a butterfly, literally turns into goo. That's not a fun process. Like, imagine
Right.
dissolving your body and becoming like liquid in order to reconfigure to emerge, to be able to fly. Like, it's not supposed to be comfortable and
Yeah.
smiley and happy, but it also doesn't have to be, on the other side, depression, anxiety, complete overwhelm, breakdown,
Yeah.
burnout. It also doesn't have to be those things. And
Right.
recognizing that it's not like moving out of this dualistic way of looking at things, and recognizing, so for me, alignment is being able to see that paradox point, like I said earlier, there's like where the little intersections, that little cross point is, it's
Mm-hmm.
this and that, that dark night of the soul is hard and it's painful and it's uncomfortable and it's scary. Yes, it's all of
Yes.
those things, but it's also joyful, miraculous, transformative, empowering. It's all of those things. And I feel like when we look at it in that way, we don't have to be so afraid, because it's inevitable, right? Like, in order to
Right.
expand, to become that next butterfly, the next version, or a snake, we have to shed the skin. Every time we grow, there is a loss, and a
Yep.
loss requires a grief. If we're
Yes.
just trying to like, it's fine, I'm growing, we I don't know. I feel like we miss a lot of the beauty in that pain, the beauty in the I'm using your special word, that, yeah, that it's beautiful pain,
Yes.
beautiful, if we can learn. And this is a cultivation of that mindset shift.
Right. And well, and honoring the fact that the emotions are there to help us move through or like move forward, to understand what it is that we're going through. Because like even going through a breakup, like if you were the one that initiated the breakup, you're still gonna have grief.
Of
Like
course.
you might have relief, you might feel great, like I finally stepped away, but the grief still is going to be there, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And it's normal, and it's your release system, and just move through it and find the joy on the other side. And I love that that's like 100% the message that you are sharing, and you have these programs to help people like tap back into that. Excuse me. Like, oh, I'm getting like emotional a little bit because it's just
Good.
so,
What emotions coming up for you here?
yes.
Like, what is that? What is that?
See, it's so funny because like when I was growing up, emotions were definitely not safe.
Yeah.
And it's, you were talking about how like tapping back into that anger and like giving anger back. So I just did an episode a couple weeks ago that was just me talking about my experience moving through anger because I had a moment where I yelled at a driver. Like the driver cut me off, and normally, like my husband was floored because he's like, that's not who you are. Like you don't do that. But I was so angry for like hours after. And I really had to tap into like, why am I feeling that today? And then I realized like it was letting me know that I still had work to do with like giving me the anger back, because anger is a messenger. It is a way of showing me like what it is that I needed to do. And I needed to honor my energy. I hadn't been doing the work of releasing. And, my son was in the car, and don't you hurt my son. So I was
Mama
mama
lion.
Baron. Yep.
Yeah.
So like it was
Yeah.
all these beautiful messages, but I didn't realize I still hadn't been like okay to express anger. And
Yeah.
it's
Well, if the
so
message was it's
powerful.
not safe. Yeah.
Right, right. And it's so powerful to have it back because it's just an emotion. It is
Mhm.
a guide. It's something that can give us back our power and show us like that we're passionate about something.
We care.
Yeah. And what we didn't know growing up is that there's a right and wrong way to express anger.
Yeah, a resourceful and an unresourceful way of
Yep.
absolutely. And this is the thing is again, it comes back to just if we don't know, it's kind of
Yep.
like I find this, especially being a parent, it's that's a whole journey in and of itself. But there's those moments
Absolutely.
where you're like, just like, what's going on with you? Like
Yep.
why they don't know. They
They have
don't
no
know
idea.
because they're modeling us. They're modeling how we're reacting. So you're looking up at your parents saying, "Stop yelling, stop having a meltdown," and you're like, "Uh, okay." Like that's a mixed message, right? That's
Yes.
created an internal conflict because I don't like how you're speaking to me, and even from really small, we can feel those things when something doesn't feel
Yes.
right for us. We just obviously don't know how, and we don't have the space or the voice.
Yep.
And I feel like you said something earlier about, if we're not really feeling those or being equipped in childhood, we literally become child adults. We're walking around
Absolutely.
with this like wounded inner child, like having relationships and like trying to take ourselves super seriously when we have these very and I say immature with not a negative connotation, but really immature reactions to
Yes.
life and to experiences, and then feeling either guilty about that reaction or feeling justified
Yep.
in being able to speak to people however we want. And there's a lack of self-awareness there, as opposed to now going, okay, so I did not get any of those tools when I was a child. I have to own that. In order
Yeah.
for me to actively seek and invest and like grab and reach for the tools, I first have to recognize uh, like I'm really not very emotionally regulated. Or
Yep.
for me, I've had quite an intense burnout, and what led me
Yes.
to that point was just completely and utterly being in my masculine, in that survival mode, really disconnected from my feminine, from my intuition, from source, like unplugged, like completely
Yeah.
like unplugged. And then just like trying to operate from that space. Of course your cup's gonna run dry.
Yeah.
And all of those then little messages are being ignored, and so they have to yell and scream. And so I noticed, like leading up to that burnout, that I was just completely emotionally volatile. Like anything my husband would say to me, my child would have a moment, and it was just this overreactive, very reactive very easily triggered, very easily overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I had an issue with crying. So sadness, like you were saying, with for you, anger's been quite a big one. And for me, it's been sadness. I was kind of had this message that like sadness is weak and tears are weak.
Yeah.
And so I stockpiled all of these emotions for decades, just stockpiling, 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 and not ever releasing them. Because when we cry, when we allow sadness, so I see, anger, I said earlier, is like I see it as that bodyguard emotion. It's there, it's got your back, it's there to help with your boundaries, it gives you a voice, it makes you
Yes.
feel safe, essentially, if we use it for that purpose.
Right.
And sadness is the purifier. It allows all of the other emotions when they can actually test tears. It's quite amazing under a microscope and see the biochemical compounds in that. Like tears of joy are different from tears of fear, stress, and anxiety. Like how amazing is
Really?
that the body is literally cleansing and purifying itself, coming out through the eyes. And I
No.
denied that amazing detoxification process my whole life just because of a belief that it was
Right.
weak for me to express that. And so many things changed. Like I lost weight, I felt light, like
Yep.
as I started to connect with it, because I mean, it was years and years of sediments like compounding and compacting on top of each other. And yeah, now to let the rain, like to let it rain. And that doesn't mean then we're drowning, because I think
Right.
we tend to go to an extreme. And again,
Yep.
that brings me back to my whole message of alignment is like, it's
Yep.
not supposed to be perfect all the time. We don't have to have
No.
our ducks in a row, but it's about recognizing when like the visual is, imagine being on a slack line or a tightrope, right? You look
Right.
at the person and you're like, oh, wow, they're so balanced. They're like so zen. How are they doing that? That's so amazing. If you look closely, they every muscle in their body is being able to bring them counter falling left or right, right?
Right.
And that's what gives sort of the illusion of this balance. But it's really, it requires some effort. It requires awareness. It requires embodiment. It requires
Right.
breath. It requires one step at a time to be able to hold that alignment. It's not just something that we do all the right courses and then tick, I'm now balanced and like
Right.
my life is perfect. That I think, again, we've got this program that we should like get to that point where life's perfect.
Yep.
And that really misses the point of the nature of the chaos of life.
Yep.
It's just like how quickly can we recalibrate and adjust and come back into that state of alignment and be resourcefully respond as opposed to reactively respond unconsciously. Like when we're having a very overwhelming emotion come out, and it just kind of like pours out of us
Mm-hmm.
versus being able to go, okay, so here's anger. Whew, someone just threatened my child. My child's in the back and they cut me off. Okay, so that mama bear energy came in. I can start to work with it. I'm allowed to feel this emotion. I can claim it
Yeah.
back. And this is true for all of our beautiful, delicious emotions that are in there.
Oh, it's so freeing just hearing what you have to say about it because it's true. And there is no right or wrong. Like there is no like, okay, I did great today, but tomorrow, is a different story. That's the beauty of this life. And we get to see like where can I try something different or where can like look at how far I came today. Let me celebrate that win. But also tomorrow, I might need to give myself that love and that support and that safe space that my
Mm.
inner child or my body is seeking. And that's just as important and just as beautiful. And that's what this life is. I don't know, just flowing, like my body's tingling. I'm just feeling so good.
Me too, me too, me too, me too. No, and it's so, I mean, this is the thing is I feel like, again, when we're moving in survival mode, we're
Yep.
not actually able to self-reflect in this way because we're in
Yep.
that very much, this is happening to me. I don't have control over it. It just is
Yep.
what it is. I just have to get through the
Yep.
next moment. There's this, like, almost like our blinkers are on, right? Like we've got our little blinkers. We can't go to a higher mind and innovate and like really take stock of things from that space.
Right.
And so really that being the starting point, the real starting point is just noticing what mode. And like a little practice that I've started doing now is asking myself, and I mean, still, with all the work, with all the things, like no bullshit, obviously, I'll get very triggered. Gonna
Yep.
get triggered. Someone cuts me off and threatens my child. I'm gonna get triggered.
Yep.
The difference is it's not about getting to a point that nothing touches us. And I think that puts a lot of pressure on people, again, coming back to that
Absolutely.
feeling of like, I'm supposed to just know and I'm supposed to get it right every time. And it's about recognizing that I can refine that. I can
Yep.
develop. The thing that I'm developing is my self-awareness.
Yeah.
And the more self-awareness I have, I can pause. So the practice is kind of going, so instead of responding, there's like a pause, and it's like, what mode am I in currently? And so it will be like, okay, so I've learned to recognize when I'm in survival mode, there's an urgency to what I'm
Yep.
doing. There's a sense of lack. I'm operating from fear. I'm making this decision because it has to be done now.
Right.
Anytime I notice that, and it happens, right? It happens.
Yep.
So anytime I notice that, to have now the practice of the pause of going, okay, so what will happen if I respond right now from the survival mode? And sometimes it's useful. If I'm trying to escape a fire, damn well right, I want to be in survival mode because I need that adrenaline to pump to
Yep.
my extremities, to pump to my heart, to give me enough oxygen, to get the hell my family out of that.
Yep.
So it's not about that's bad or that's good. It's about
Yes.
recognizing, is this the mode right now that I need to be operating from? 90% of the time, it's no.
Yeah.
90% of the time, that threat, that anxiety, that overwhelm, that worry is imagined.
Yep.
Right. So in this
Yep.
moment, right, that bill needs to be paid at the end of the month. I'm worrying or stressing about it in this present moment. And actually, me switching to divine resourceful mode is going to find the most creative, miraculous, delicious ways to solve the problem. But
Yes.
if I'm trying to force that from the survival mode now, I'm going to just keep getting more worry, more stress, more anxiety, more overwhelm. And then that's, for me, really is kind of hell, like this perpetual suffering that we find ourselves in, you know?
I love the way you framed it because it's so true. Like just realizing like a lot of people talk about, you're living in survival mode or you're thriving. Like I do as well, but I've never heard it framed the way you just stated it. Like we are responding from a place of survival in certain areas, like someone who has never been on a Zoom call before. Like I know my son, he gets really
Yeah.
like amped up. He doesn't like to be visible on camera. And he responds from a place of survival mode. And like, I don't know, having that in the thought process of being able to recognize almost gives you this power of like, I see it now. Like if I see it, if I understand it, then I can change it.
100%. Well, that really is the crux of, for me, all of it is
Yep.
that the self-awareness, right? And cultivating, because it's like you don't go to the gym once and expect yourself to have like a six-pack.
Right.
It's like that would be crazy, right? But
Right.
we expect that with
Yep.
self-development. We're like, oh, but I did that in a really expensive course. Like, I went to that seminar. Like, I'm supposed to like, have my shit figured out right now.
Right.
And it's not like that. It's a practice. It's a cultivation. It's like, the garden. Like, I can't just water it once and expect the seed to grow. I need to have a practice. I need to have
Right.
um so a lot of, I love this idea of ritualizing the mundane, like really bringing, I feel like in our modern world, we really disconnected. We have rituals, but they're really unconscious, so it's like
Right.
maybe after dinner I sit on my phone and I scroll Instagram, or again, not a bad thing, but are we doing that? What mode are we doing that from, right? So
Right.
having this ritualizing the mundane and being like, okay, so I'm washing these dishes, I'm going to wash them anyway. I'm going to wash them anyway. Like, they gotta, like, every day there's dishes in my sink every
Yeah.
day.
Right.
Okay. So I could make a plan and outsource that job, or I could get a dishwasher, but then I still have to like stack. There's certain things that you just do every day. And I feel like with the human condition, we kind of, I don't know, we always want like the quick fix or the cheat code or like the easy way out. And then it must just be like fixed and solved, as opposed to really seeing the magic of, okay, so I'm washing these dishes. This is a
Right.
moment of gratitude. This is a moment to be grateful for the food that we just ate and the nourishment that I gave my family and that I have these
Yep.
dishes. And so before, and when I guarantee you, when I wash dishes in survival mode, I am not able to access the gratitude because it's like, ah, these dishes and no one else helps me and it's all by, you know what I mean?
I
But being
do, yeah.
having that awareness to intersect, because again, everything, every moment is a choice. I'm choosing what to be moment to moment. I'm not gonna be something in the future, which is kind of again what we're like, okay, I'm gonna do this thing, I'm gonna do the dishes, and then I'm gonna have clean dishes, and then I can be chill. Like that's the sort of framing that we're conditioned in, as opposed to
Right,
be, do, be, and then do from a place of being, and then
right,
have, right? And
right,
for me, that switch mentally has been a complete game changer because now I recognize, so it's not about the doing of these dishes. I'm using the
right,
dishes analogy because perhaps we can relate to it, is I'm being. So what am I wanting to be while I do this thing? I'm wanting to be grateful because I want to be
right,
a grateful person. I want to cultivate gratitude in every like that's intrinsically what I want to be is grateful.
right,
So this is an opportunity, this is a ritual. So while I'm doing this thing to be doing from being, and then I have peace, not because I have a clean house, but because I've been in this state of gratitude while I was doing this thing, and now
right.
I'm in peace and I have clean dishes. So it's like a win-win, right? And
Absolutely.
but looking at where in your, because we have so, a lot of people, I hear so many, I don't have time. I don't have time to do rituals. I don't have time to do this work. That is the survival mode, is that urgency, right? You
Right.
do. We all have the same amount of time.
Yep.
We think of how much time we spend escaping our emotions, numbing
Mhm.
ourselves. If we spent even just a fraction of that, like just turning the lens in,
Yeah.
we would find all the gifts, all the answers, all the like solutions to the so-called problems just by being able to flip that lens and pause for a minute.
Oh,
I could talk about this further.
I know, I love it. I'm the same. That's why I started this podcast. Like I love hearing what brings like passion in somebody else. And like I can feel your passion just radiating off of you. And your message is just so beautiful. And like as I'm listening, I'm creating these new pathways in my head and like connecting things that I've learned and realizing like it fits other things. So in your perspective, like from where you teach and where you're at and like how you feel about emotions and what you know, so what I like kind of piece together is when you're in that survival mode, you can also like remind yourself that you're also in an emotional state. And the emotions, like trying to make a logical or healthy choice for yourself is almost impossible because our brain can only like work, like we have 10 levels. So if we're even, like we've got 5 in logic, 5 in emotion. But if you're 10 in emotions, that means you have nothing left for logical decisions, which is what I consider like blackout angry, where you make really bad choices. So, like, while you're talking about that dishes analogy, all I could think is like, oh, I'm doing it in survival and I'm mad that my family's not helping me. I'm emotional. My emotions are letting me know like I need to take care of my body real quick. I need to find that emotional regulation to be able to move forward. And oh, like I just made my brain feel really good.
Oh, yummy, yummy, yummy. That
Yeah.
that is that's that's what I love about that, the sort of the art of reframing is recognizing that we can see things from, I mean, I could use 500 different metaphors and each one would cause a sort of different feeling
Yep.
in your body. And I feel like again, when we're in that survival mode, like you say,
Mm-hmm.
what's interesting, and I'm a bit of a neuroscience geek. I love understanding the logical aspect because I love spirit, energy, quantum physics, but I want to understand like, okay, but like very practically, like what is going
Same.
on?
Yep.
It's a different part of the brain that's being activated when we're having a high emotion. We're in the limbic brain. We're having a
Mm-hmm.
very intense, we can't access our
Yep.
prefrontal cortex. We can't think like literally, it's not computing. And so again, coming back to a point of neutrality, we can call it neutrality, we can call it equilibrium, equanimity, or alignment, is that moment of pause where I recognize, okay, so where am I?
Yep.
Like if you can just that, like only that as a tool, if we can just start to practice that self-awareness of just checking where we are. And like you said, for you, if I'm in an emotional response and feeling like no one cares, my family's not supporting me, I'm in that frame, I'm also identifying. I now become the feeling.
Yep.
And this is what's really interesting, and how we create these emotional feedback loop. And I'm going to use the word addiction, and I
Yep.
know that might land for some people in some way, and I just invite that to land, because it is. The
Yes.
body literally becomes addicted to stress. So I grew up in a very volatile environment, and my nervous system was always waiting for the next like whack, or high volume. So I'm used to that. My
Hmm.
husband, most like calm, he's like literally the embodiment and epitome of safety. And we've been together almost 8 years now. Trust me, drama queen over here. When things were too good, too calm, too okay, the
You'd
pot
stir
would
the
need to be
pot.
stirred, because it wasn't my body didn't feel safe in calm, which is ironic,
Yeah.
right? Because we all think like, oh, safe is really calm and peaceful and joyful. And for especially if you've had, a traumatic background, it's not. And so
Yes.
the
Yep.
mind's like, oh, but I should be enjoying this like quiet downtime moment, but actually this downtime moment makes me feel anxious, and that's why I'm washing the dishes in a huff, because I
Yep.
feel like I need to be busy, because that gives me a sense of like purpose, or like I'm
Yes.
doing something. But if we're not understanding where that we're operating from, it
Yep.
doesn't matter how many tools we have. We only have resources available to the state that we're in. When you're in survival mode, you can't access all those millions of courses that you've done.
Right.
You can't. The
Yeah.
only juncture point there is to recognize I'm operating in survival mode right now. And
Yep.
that's okay. And that is okay. That's the truth of this moment. It's not permanent. This is what it is. This is the truth of it. I'm not going to bullshit
Yep.
myself. I'm not going to, this is what it is in this moment. And it's from that moment, that pause, that we have access to our free will choice again.
Yes.
And the more times we choose to, you know what, I'm not going to do the dishes from the survival mode, because it's me creating the urgency. No one will die if the
Yep.
dishes stay. But that's what it feels like, right? It's like if it doesn't get
Yes.
done, it feels like it's a mess. If it feels like it's a mess, it's chaos. If it's chaos, I can't relax.
Yep.
Like if we break it down to
Oh
nuts
yeah.
and bolts, okay, it's like
Yep.
I'm doing this thing because it, again, that do have be, right? Then I can be
Yes.
chill. I can only be chill once the dishes are done. No. What does it feel like to be chill? So what I've noticed is even being able to pause enough and step back and say, you know what, I'm not gonna do the dishes. I'm gonna go and actually take a bath.
Yep.
And the craziest stuff, ladies, if you're watching, the craziest stuff, or gentlemen, the craziest stuff started happening. Like my husband would come in and it would be done. I realized I was taking up so much space that I wasn't allowing myself to be nourished and supported, because the belief
Yep.
was that I couldn't be, that it was all on me. I had to hold everything myself. So with that belief, of course, I'm going to keep getting the same messaging,
Yep.
but I'm standing there doing the dishes before anyone has the opportunity to.
Yep.
Who's that on? That's on me. And I don't have to say that in like a guilt trip. That's on me. Cool. If it's on me, I can take it off me, put it down over there, and someone else can do it. Yeah.
I connect with that message wholeheartedly, because I taught my husband how to treat me in that same way before we stepped into our growth and moved forward through the things that we went through, and that was exactly it. I was taking everything onto myself, because in my world, if he needed me, he wouldn't leave me. He wasn't planning on leaving me anyways, but like, and I didn't do that consciously. That was just a subconscious programming of, I need all of you to need me, so I'm going to make sure you all need me. And
And then
reprogramming that. Oh,
and the beauty, I love that. Thank you. That's such a vulnerable share. And I think that's so we can, I mean, I relate to that 100%. That abandonment wound is so alive, I think, in a lot of us. Anyone who
yeah,
grew up with the Ferber method, the cry it out method, anything like that, we have this innate abandonment because I
yeah,
was left to emotionally regulate by myself. A baby cannot emotionally regulate, like they can't. They
yes,
regulate by
right.
feeling your heartbeat, they regulate by hearing your breath, they
Yep,
regulate by feeling safe. And I mean, most of us have had, yeah, that kind of abandonment wound is so deep. And even just the severance from source, you incarnate
yep.
into physical form, and there's this sort of like, okay, like you're on your own now. We
Right.
all have it, we can look on different levels. We can, the severing, the cutting of the placenta. There's that life force energy that we've needed for nourishment, and then it's like just
Right.
chopped away with no intention or no explanation. All of these things have an impact on the body. And
Absolutely.
honoring, and I think this is again that self-awareness of you being able to have the self-awareness to be like, wow, I'm taking up this space because I need you to need me, because if you don't, you could leave me.
Yep.
And the ironic thing with that is that we end up feeling just so resentful because you don't want to like, we're a team, right? Like we want to
Right.
be doing this together. If I'm doing everything, we're not being a team, it's just on me. I
Yep.
totally relate to that.
Well,
That-
that's 100% what we did. And then I blew it up
yeah,
and then didn't want I was gonna walk away. Like I was gonna walk away. It was this self-fulfilling prophecy of
yeah.
I'm giving you everything. You're not giving me what I needed, but I didn't give you the space to give me what I needed. And I didn't tell you.
What I needed.
Yeah. So like it it
Yeah,
it really was on me. I can't expect somebody to treat me the way I want to be treated when I don't tell them, when I don't
yeah, we're not
show
mind
them.
readers. We're not mind
No,
readers. Like, oh, this is such a big one. And I think I do a lot of couples coaching, and this is probably one of the biggest things. It's like, but he should just know. He's like supposed to just like know to do the dishes. It like, doesn't he know that would make me feel no. No, he
no.
doesn't, because like you just do it.
Yep.
And like maybe his mom just did it, and maybe he doesn't have a frame of reference. Like there's so many
Yes.
reasons and so many perspectives that, and you're again, we're creating meaning, we give life meaning. So I'm looking
Yep.
at your behavior and saying, because you're not doing this, you don't care.
Yep.
That's just my perspective. That's not true. Like for me, I know my husband loves me, I know all these things to be true, but I'm looking at I'm nitpicking certain behaviors or responses that fit my frame that I've been
Yes.
given, that default mechanism. So I can't trust you. I can't cry in front of you. I can't be all of you, all of myself with you,
Hmm.
because that's not safe, because that's what and it's a reconditioning. Like we're literally having to recondition our nervous system to learn the unknown, the unfamiliar.
Yes.
It's like give ourselves a little bit of a break. Like I love the metaphor of, you've got kids as well. When a child's learning to walk, and they fall down, I mean, copious amounts of times, right? They
Oh yeah.
fall down, and they keep getting up. And you don't look at that child going, you moron, like you idiot for not, we don't think of it like that. But when you're learning something new and doing something unknown to your mind, to your emotions, to your nervous system, we do that to ourselves. We're like, oh, but you should know.
Yes.
You should. No, right now, and this is again just being honest with
Yep.
ourselves. Hey, I am an infant right now in my emotional development, and I am falling and I am reacting, and that is okay, because I'm getting better and better, and I'm feeling better on my feet. You know what I mean? Like give ourselves a
Right.
little bit of spaciousness to recognize that it's unfamiliar, it's unknown, and it takes some adjustment.
Yes. Oh, you are just such a beautiful ray of sunshine. Like I am so grateful that you shared your story and just shared all these tools that I mean gave my body chills through the entire thing. So like I already know like that's my body's way of telling me this is all good. Like,
Yeah.
these are messages. You better think on this later because it is gold.
Love it.
Um, do you have any, like, do you have like one thing? Like if you had to look at somebody and you only get one thing from me that's going to help you the best right now, what would you have? What would you tell them?
Lead with curiosity, cultivate curiosity. Like I get a little emotional at that because I feel, we lead with judgment. We
Yes.
lead with judgment. And when you start to, so I mean, even just asking yourself, so like, what's the difference between judgment and curiosity? Like, how would you know the difference in your body, right? And for most people, this is very unfamiliar because we're so used to feeling critical or judgmental. But so
Right.
for me, it's like very much aligned with your message. Curiosity is that sort of childlike wonder, that authenticity, that curious. I'm just like,
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know. And like, it's actually okay not to know and like not to have everything figured out and to just own where I am and not be afraid of how high the mountain is because I just want to get curious about what's the next step. Like, what's that one next step? And if I can lead with that curiosity, then self-awareness automatically feels like it has more spaciousness because I'm if I'm being all judgy, do you think I'm going to want to be with myself and be aware if I'm like being very hypercritical? No. But if I'm
Right.
like, hey babe, what's going on? Why are we feeling so activated? It's a lot of emotions going on in the body. Like, let's get curious. I'm more likely to stick around and listen to myself and investigate and explore. It's an
Right.
adventure. And I think that, like, for me, curiosity is just such a big part of this work. I think, again, in the self-development, it's like, Sarah, like, you got to take your shadow, you got to do shadow work, and you got to do this. And it's like all these things. And it's like, okay, but let's make it fun again. Like, let's
Yes.
make this fun. Let's lead with curiosity. Let's play more. Let's explore more, as opposed to being like, oh my goodness, I'm repeating my intergenerational wounded trauma. And now I'm going to, no, like, okay, oh, yes, I'm repeating my intergenerational trauma. Oh, how interesting. How interesting. And then lead with that. So that really, for anyone watching, that really is like the wish, 15 years ago, someone could have sort of said that to me, just cultivate, because it's an unknown feeling. So
Right.
ask yourself that question. What does it feel like to lead with curiosity in everything that you do, even in communication and conversation? If I'm curious about you, I'm
Right.
going to be more open. I'm going to be less defensive or closed because I'm curious. I'm open, you know?
You
So
try to
yes,
understand where someone else is coming from, and
absolutely. Yeah,
then you have the connection.
absolutely. Yes.
I
Yeah.
love it. You are speaking my language. So there's a question. I really love to hear the answer from everyone that comes on, because this new dream is my baby, and I love it, and it is bringing me such joy, but I'm creating this for the world. So I'm curious that when you hear the phrase the new dream, what does it make you think of?
I'm gonna full circle here, and I'm gonna come back to that river metaphor that I shared earlier about recognizing that continuity, right? Like that we can
Right.
break that continuity by becoming something new. So for me, the new dream is recognizing that there is there is there's always something new, but
Mhm.
really honoring where we are. Like I shared earlier in that I'm currently inside a previous dream. So
Right.
I'm in the new dream. And in,
Absolutely.
2 months time, I'm going to be in another new dream and in another new dream. And I think, yeah, for me, it's about how to consciously design, like an architect design that new dream. um, and leave room to be surprised, because I think that that's also a lot of fun, is like so many things that happen, so many things that manifest are like beyond, because your imagination is kind of like the floor of what's possible as
Right.
opposed to like the ceiling. So yeah, when I hear the new dream, and I think we're doing this on an individual level,
Yep.
and the all is one and the one is all, right? So as we do it, I feel like when we recognize that us showing up for the new dream in ourselves is being the change in the world, you know. So the more I feel like it's such a monumentous task to think like I need to change the world, but I can change me. I can
Yes.
create a new dream for me, and in doing so and aligning that to the dream of like what I want my children to experience and the legacy that like I want to leave behind, you know, like I'm aligning my individual dream to the collective dream. So yeah, that's what comes up for me when I hear new dream.
I may or may not have gotten emotional for you. I,
Great.
that touches my heart so much. And it's just such a beautiful message. And I couldn't agree more.
Yay. Well,
I,
you're doing, thank you for, yeah, thank you for being able to connect to your purpose and your gift and being able to offer such a beautiful space for people to ask themselves these questions, you know, and be,
right,
like I always find it such a privilege coming on and sharing, because a lot of times you're just kind of like in the work, right? You're like,
right.
and it's very much about the other person, about the other person. And so I'm just so very grateful for these spaces where it's also a
Yes,
moment to just sort of reflect on our own personal journeys and like what is the thing that we do in the world. These are important questions, you know, so thank you for asking them and creating a space and a platform, yeah, for people to share. It's beautiful work.
I appreciate that. That was my goal with this, is holding
It's
space
felt.
for wherever somebody is at in the moment, whether, we all agree or whether, there's more growth, because there's always more growth. There's
Always.
always more steps, always more things, but just holding that space can make all the difference. And that's what I want to give. So I'm so glad that
And you
you
did
felt that.
beautifully. I
I'm
felt it.
so glad.
Yes. Yes. Thank
So
you.
to our viewers, if you felt connected to Tristan's story and want to further step into your alignment and see like her ways of doing different processes, if you connected with what she has to offer, I will put the links to her socials, and she's on YouTube and Instagram, and she runs the Life Aligned Academy. So definitely seek her out. I know I'm going to be watching your YouTube like all the time now. Your energy is beautiful. And I just thank you for sharing yourself with me today.
Thank you for giving me the space to do so. I'm so
Thank
grateful.
you.
And thank you so much to everyone watching. And I, yeah, look forward to connecting.
All right. Have a beautiful day, everyone.
Bye.
Got those pretty eyes that are